Do it. Try it out. Do it. Do hard things.
All right, welcome back to the Runway to Success. I'm Michaela Rivera, and Trey and I couldn't be more thrilled today. We have an incredible guest with us who truly embodies what it means to lead with precision, courage, and vision. Eric Popeye Doyle is the CEO of RAVN Aerospace, a company at the forefront of adversary air and advanced training solutions for the U.S. Department of Defense. Before stepping into this role, though, Eric served an extraordinary career in the U.S. Navy. He was a Top Gun instructor, a combat experienced fighter pilot, and most famously, he was the commander and the flight leader for the Blue Angels. Today, we're going to talk about his journey from the cockpit to the boardroom, the lessons that have carried him forward, what RAVN Aerospace is tackling today in the defense industry, and what his perspective is on where aviation training is headed. Eric, we're so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Eric, I'm going to be just transparent. I think Michaela and I were having kind of a debate of who was more excited about this podcast episode. I think we were sharing kind of before we got started today. I've been around aviation my entire life. I've shared in one of our other episodes. Top Gun was kind of for a lot of people the very first movie I can remember seeing in the movie theater. And really inspired my aviation journey, a little bit of motorcycle journey too along the way as well, kind of mixed in. But to have a chance to actually speak to not just somebody who attended Top Gun, but was an instructor amongst other things, it's pretty exciting to see you here today and welcome you. So with all that being said, I'd love for you to kind of start at the beginning, right? You kind of lived the dream that so many people imagine, from flying fighter jets to becoming Top Gun instructor, leading the Blue Angels. What first drew you to aviation to begin with?
Yeah, it started like you at a really young age. My dad was a fighter pilot, Air Force fighter pilot, so he flew F-4s, F-16s, a whole host of aircraft in the Air Force. And flying is incredible. There's a cool factor, I guess, to flying, of course, and whether it be a Cessna or an F-18, flying is a pretty amazing experience. So there was that piece of it, but the other opportunity I had at a young age was to watch him fly and to watch him brief, or to watch him interact with the people that he led or that he was being led by. And my dad was not probably the most military person you ever met. If you met him outside of work or the Air Force, he would probably think that he's just a kind of a silly guy. But it was almost this transformation that I would watch at work. He's a different person at home than he was flying and in those leadership roles. And I watched, he was a gifted aviator for sure, but he was also a natural leader, and people gravitated to him. And I didn't know what it was in that the environment and the culture and everyone aligned, striving to achieve a unified mission, all being motivated and doing what it took to get that done. If that meant stay late, get up early, spend another extra time doing it, whatever it took, they were there to accomplish the mission. They believed in it. And it was eye-opening to me to see that, and not just in him, but in the others that he flew with. And like I said, I couldn't put my finger on what that was, but I knew I wanted to be involved in that, both flying and then in a team that looked a lot like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the transformation that it sounded like you watched with your dad when it's like game face mode. I think of if you're an athlete and you're getting in the game. So for you, your dad was in the Air Force. You went down the path of the Navy and grew into a leader yourself. What moments would you say kind of helped you become the leader that you are today?
Many of us, I think, friends of mine that entered the Air Force or the Navy or anything like that, you may enter it for the very nearsighted or obvious goal of flying jets. I wanted to fly F-18s. Going into the Navy, I wanted single seat fighters, and I had some good timing, a little bit of hard work, and it panned out for me. The hidden gift that you get, especially in naval aviation, is the opportunities to lead and be a part of a team and unite with that team, but also lead that team. And I don't think I'm God's gift to leadership, but I did get a lot of opportunity to lead, and it's hard. It's a hard process. Um, to learn, you make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you do silly things. But as long as you're humble, you set your ego aside, you want to learn and get better at it, then you get a lot of those opportunities in the Navy. And one opportunity that always sticks with me is when I was at Top Gun. I was a Top Gun instructor, and towards the end of my time at Top Gun, I was fortunate enough to become the training officer of Top Gun. And the training officer is kind of like an OIC or a squadron commander light on the Top Gun staff. There is a CEO of Top Gun, but he or she is usually focused, at least during my time, focused on some pretty big strategic things going on just outside of Top Gun and naval aviation. So the day-to-day is at Top Gun is run by the training officer. And so you're put in a pretty substantial leadership role, leading what are a lot of horses and a lot of hard chargers that just don't want to work each other harder than the other person. And that's one of the more challenging roles I think I started out, and one that was a real kind of obvious, like, this is a leadership role. There were others in the fleet prior to that, but where you're especially leading your peers, folks that you went through pilot training with, that you are roommates with. And so that was a defining moment in leadership, and getting a few bumps and bruises and scars along the way, and some wins and losses. But in that time, I had a great CEO at Top Gun, Thomas Downing, Trim Downing. If you get a chance to put him on your list someday, you'd have a wonderful conversation. He was the CEO of Top Gun, and kind of a legend in his in real time. He's one of those guys that you would hear. You'd follow them through the gates of hell with a gas can in each hand. I have immense respect for him, and he was the CEO of Top. I met him at Top Gun, and a lot of in the in the bar or out back in off time, talking to him about leadership, and that opportunity I had, I think, really shaped me early on.
I was going to say, we in a previous episode chatted about sometimes the most challenging things that happen in leadership is that first step, when now all of a sudden you're looking left and right and you're leading your peers, people who you've been sitting side by side with. And you mentioned this gentleman that you had the opportunity to sit down with, and you would go through the gates of hell. What attributes do you think he really exhibited that made you want to follow him and made you want to believe in him? What were those characteristics?
That's a tough one. And those are, what is it about a person that makes you want to follow them? It's when they give you really clear guidance, they give you trust, they stay out of your way, and they will let you go do it. They let you go make mistakes, and I think I was reading some quotes by Admiral McCraven recently. I don't know if you read much of his stuff, but a phenomenal leader, somebody I would aspire to learn from. And I think he embodied that type of leadership that was a servant leader. He was there to provide a mission objective, commander's intent, remove obstacles from your path, and then let you go out there and do it and make mistakes and maybe hit a few bumps along the way, but have your back and always remain calm, underreact, but give you the ability to go do the mission. And that's all people, I think, really want. And so my goal is just surround myself with great people, and I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room or the best leader, but I make sure that there's plenty of others in our group that are, and I just try to stay out of the way.
I'd love to rewind to your time as an instructor at Top Gun, obviously commander as well with the Blue Angels. From a leadership perspective, you kind of commented a moment ago that you're working with some hard chargers, I'm imagining lots of alphas, right? And frankly, just the absolute best of the best of their craft, right? And so what are some of what I would say, what would be the biggest lesson that you learned through that process, and what would be advice for future leaders or somebody who's in a similar situation where they're working with the best of the best that you would give them in terms of leadership characteristics moving forward?
Well, first, when you're building that team and getting all the right people on the bus, it matters less about their technical capability. It matters more about who they are. And using the Blue Angels as an example, there's a criteria that's required to interview at the Blues with respect to flight time and some grades and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's no flying interview at the Blue Angels. And it's a very flying intensive job, of course. And if you knew a little bit about the turnover rate and how many new people are in that Delta formation every year, it's pretty jaw-dropping. But you are hiring the people that you can spend 300 plus days with in a room. They're going to put their ego aside and care more about the mission of the team and less about them as an individual. And if you can think about that when you're building your team, and you can really, with a few key attributes, humility, ownership, optimism, with those attributes, you can build trust within your team, and you can do anything. And there's a lot of great books written out there. George Dahm, former Blue Angel commanding officer, wrote a book on trust, and it's phenomenal. And I don't think trust is necessarily an attribute, but rather something that you build and grow. And there's levels of trust, but you need to have some characteristics, human characteristics that will put you in a situation where you can really grow and build that trust to do anything. If you look at some of the formations that the Blues fly, they're phenomenal. And I was lucky. I'm a Blue Angels fan. I was before, and I am one now. I just had the distinct opportunity to be one for a few years. And there's many times I look at that team, what they do, and I sometimes forget that, wow, I did that. It's pretty phenomenal. But it's all about the people. I cannot, you may hear that, it may sound cliche at times, all about the people, but take a look at that formation. And every year in that Delta formation, 5 of the 6 pilots are flying that position for the first time that year. And 3 of the pilots in that 6-plane formation weren't even in the Delta the year prior. They're all new. And that happens every single year. But you hire a new group every year. You replace some, and you move folks around in the formation, and you start over again, and you build that team every single year. But it's all about you're not out there finding the best of the best fighter pilots. Mm-hmm. There are some key attributes they need to have just from flying the airplane, some basic things. But you can almost train anybody to fly those formations. Almost anybody, if you're willing to, make it about everyone else.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, as a commander, you obviously you were number one, right? And so everyone was following your lead, listening to your cadence. Do you still remember the entire performance cadence? Can you still recite it to this day?
I can. Yeah.
Wow.
There's some things that I think are in my core memories now that I can say without even. It's almost like hitting play. They come out. I was actually listening to a documentary I was driving home from one of our company's operating locations last night. I was listening to actually a podcast, and it was about trust and leadership, and it was just a random choice. And out of the just pure coincidental luck, they started talking about the Blue Angels and chair flying and visualization. And there it was, chair flying at the end of this podcast. I didn't know that was going to be on there. And I'm just kind of listening and kind of reciting along in my head, and maybe grading because it wasn't me, but it was. It's in there still. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
It's really interesting. So I'm a little sad to say it, but my first air show where I got to see the Blue Angels was 2 years ago, 2023,
Hmm.
I think is when we went. And maybe we had gone when we were younger in Florida, and I was so amazed. And then we watched, there was a documentary, I think it was Amazon Prime, about the Blue
Mm-hmm.
Angels, which was amazing. What's fascinating to me is how much is transferable to the civilian space and what you're talking about with the skills. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a baseline for entry, and I would say it's probably a pretty high baseline to be able to fly with the Blue Angels, but it doesn't trump the attitude of the individual that you're going to bring onto the team, because you could be
Mm-hmm.
the best quarterback in the NFL or the best fighter pilot, but if you're not willing to play on the team and have that trust and create that right environment, it can really cause significant issues. So it's interesting to hear you talk about how almost that attitude perspective was more critical to the overall success than just those skills of flying, because you would think the skills of flying might come first because of the high risk you were dealing with.
Yeah. I look at Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots. You could listen to Tom Brady speak, or anyone from that team, and I think they'll tell you very similar, give you very similar feedback. It is about the team, not the individual, and they didn't always get the fastest or the best at that specific skill. They brought team members onto their team, and they won a bunch of Super Bowls doing that. And if you could do that in the NFL, or you can fly formations in fighter jets that are about that far apart, I'm here to say you can do just about anything. The cool thing is you can see a visual representation with the Blue Angels of a formation that is really quite phenomenal. And it is about the people and who they are, and less about that stick and rudder skill.
Well, it's shifting gears a bit. Your military career has kind of led you in a lot of ways to where you are professionally, and so you've taken on, kind of after this distinguished career in the military, taken on this new challenge, right, of leading an organization, leading a company. What kind of led you and made you to decide to take on that role as CEO of RAVN?
I think it's important, and this is not necessarily why I went where I am, but it's important to do hard things. And you look at your military career, for example, and when I went to the Blue Angels, I had done 20 years in the Navy flying F-18s. I had 3,000 flight hours. I had a lot of experience, Top Gun instructor. I flew F-22s for the Air Force for a little over 3 years. I was pretty good at my trade. And you can, at that point in a career, you can put it on cruise control and ride it out in any career for that matter. Once you've built a certain amount of credibility, you can rest on those laurels and ride. And I decided with with my family that let's give this Blue Angel thing a try. And I'll tell you what, I felt like I was a brand new guy again. I mean, right, and everything was different. I could start the F-18 and I could taxi and take off, but that was about it. Everything else was different. I mean, from walking to maintenance control to getting in the building, the way you carried your briefcase, the way you did everything was new. And you walk in the door and you're number one. And so you're leading everything, not just the formation, we're walking somewhere. There's a way to do it in the Blues, and right out of the gate, you're the first one. And I tell you, for the first 6 months or more, I was spending a lot of time getting debriefed on not just flying, but how we operate as a team. Not necessarily culturally, but there's a lot of processes and procedures on everything, and bosses leading everything. So that can be tough to deal with at times. No matter how much you say you're humble and you want to learn, when you keep getting beat up day after day, in a good way, in a positive way, but when by beat up, I mean you continue to make mistakes over and over and over, it can be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you're like, they're going to have to bring the old guy back because I'm not sure I'm going to get there. So, but when you can stay humble, continue to take those debriefs, excuse me, own your mistakes and stay optimistic about the future ahead, you're going to get there. And having a team that unites around, and a lot of times with a first year boss, the team does unite around the boss, because if the boss doesn't fly, nobody flies. And again, not to make it about me, it's just the flight leader has to lead the formation. And there's a lot of folks there that unite around you to make sure you're successful, so everyone's, and you'll unite around everybody else that may need that at the time. So that is a daunting experience at times, and extremely rewarding. And one of the best experiences of my life from a professional standpoint. Retiring from the Navy and going into the private sector and leading a company like that felt a lot like going to the blues. But there was a lot of familiarity with, all right, this is different. When I went and flew with the Air Force for a few years and flew F-22s, all of that was different. There was a lot of guys and girls there. We're all cut from the same cloth, but it was the Air Force. And so it wasn't just that the airplane was new, the way the Air Force did things was new and different. And again, those are challenging, but you do them enough, you kind of get used to, okay, this is a new situation again. I'll keep my head down, focus on being a lifelong learner, and we can figure this out. And I think most folks, if you're like me and you retire, especially after a longer career, you kind of go through this cycle of, maybe I should just stay in the military as long as possible. I'm not ready. I didn't grow up in the private sector. Maybe I'm not worthy. I haven't never run a P&L or financial statement. I could spend a lot of money in the Navy. I could save money, but I never made any money. That was not a job. And in reality, in the private sector, you need to make a little money, or you need to at least break even. And so that's a different aspect. And that can be a little daunting at first, but you surround yourself with good folks. I spent a lot of time with our CFO, and sometimes I surprise myself at the things I've learned in a few years.
You mentioned it can be daunting to transition into the private sector, especially when you've built such a really great decorated career. What leadership lessons would you say carried over very easily, maybe surprisingly so, to your role at RAVN? And what did you learn in your first, 3-6 months? Hey, maybe I need to adapt or adjust how I'm approaching something to better serve this position in this company.
Yeah, well, in some ways they're almost the same, and others it's very different. And no situation is the same. In all of the leadership roles I had in the Navy, they all had different attributes. Leading a group of Top Gun instructors, there's no challenge in keeping people motivated. Sometimes you have to focus on, hey, once you go home after your 16th day straight of being in the office and literally sleeping there, like, go home, take a break. You just go away for a bit. So that's a challenge, to make sure those guys and girls are taking care of themselves and not running themselves into the ground. In the fleet, maybe you have every place is a little bit different from the leadership standard. That said, I was fortunate through my time in the Navy to see a lot of those different situations, and they're all kind of tools in the toolbox that you can break out and use them in the right combination. But it's different at RAVN. There's no doubt. But again, just some of the core principles remain the same, which is give clear vision, communicate that vision, and get the right people in place and let them do the job. And make sure they know that. And that takes refreshing that conversation a lot to make sure they know that.
Well, we've been talking about RAVN, and for those that may not be familiar with RAVN and what RAVN Aerospace does, how do you fit into the greater or broader aerospace and defense ecosystem?
Well, we're at the end of the day, we're here to increase readiness, and with our aircraft, we can bring a lower cost. If you look at it purely from a cost perspective, a BAE Hawk is going to operate a little lower cost than an F-16 or a Hornet or a Raptor. So you can just bring a lower cost opportunity to the DoD. Not to mention, if you're a squadron commander of an F-15 squadron in the Air Force and you're trying to train your pilots and have your aircraft ready to go on deployment, you're managing your aircraft, you're managing your pilots, and if you can focus on your pilots training towards the blue mission, the mission they're going to employ in combat, you can also focus on keeping your airplanes focused on doing the same thing. You can have your pilots focused on the mission. You can have your airplanes lowering the rate at which they fly. And you can bring somebody else in like us that brings a little bit lower price point, and you can accelerate towards readiness goals and be prepared to go to combat. The other thing that I think is not often talked about is pilot manning or just manning in the military is challenging, period. I think a really nice feature that we have is we hire some folks with a really phenomenal experience in the military, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and maybe they do 20, 25 years in the military. We're going to get another 10, 15, 20 years of that person's experience provided back to the military. We have a gentleman that runs our operations at Kelly Air Force Base, retired F-16 pilot, weapons school instructor, and I was talking with him about this yesterday, and I'm guilty as well, is that sometimes I'm wearing my Navy hat or my Air Force hat more than my Raven hat, because all of these folks believe in the mission. They're there to make them better. And sometimes you're like, hey, that's not maybe in the company's best interest, but that's okay. I'd rather err on that side, and then you can come back if you need to take care of Raven a little bit more. But our folks believe in the mission that the military is trying to accomplish. And right now it's about training. And what he does specifically as the lead of our operations at Kelly Air Force Base is he brings, I don't know how many years of experience he has at this point. It's probably something around 30, in and around both as an operator of an F-16, leading people in combat, as a weapons school instructor, and then running operations on the other side, on the private company and adversary ADAIR. I know he brings a lot to the table. And so there's a lot of great aspects to our industry. I believe in what we do, not just Raven, but our compatriots at ATAC and Draken and Top Bases and TAC Air, and some of the ones on the close air support side, Valkyrie, Blue Air Training, coastal air support. They do phenomenal work, and you'll see, I think, to a person, they all are there for the mission. They all came and did it. They came from the mission, and they're staying involved in it.
So Raven, I mean, that's a really interesting space. So you're helping prepare essentially war fighters for the future, then, is like a way to summarize that. If we were to kind of pull out a little bit, what would you say are some of the industry challenges that your team's looking at, and where do you think things are headed in that space?
Yeah, it could be a little challenge. It's a capital intensive environment. So buying airplanes costs a lot of money. And, as a company, especially, we're a little bit smaller, and we're growing quickly. When I got here, this office, which is small, would have fit our whole team. And now we're about 51, 52 people as of a few days ago. So we're growing fast, but still buying a fleet of airplanes, 10, 12, 15 airplanes at a time, airplanes aren't cheap. And so finding the capital for those things, getting on contracts, and just having confidence that you're going to be able to put those aircraft to work. And I know we will. I have extreme confidence in that. But sometimes you don't have to convince me. You need to convince folks to spend that kind of money or have that kind of money. So that can be a challenge, but that's not new to our industry. I think we're not unique in that challenge. That's definitely something. And then pilot manning is something that continues to be a challenge. There's a shortage globally. And I think we felt that a little bit more as a startup in this industry as we had to build our pilot cadre. We're pretty happy with where we are, but we're pretty picky and choosy about bringing in the right people. And so it's a slow but and thoughtful process to bring them on board.
So you're right about the people side. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
anytime we speak with business owners and leaders, it usually comes up that the people resource, the right talent, is one of the biggest
Mm-hmm.
things that they're addressing. You said it's a slow process, and in recruiting, which is our expertise, we always like to say go slow to go fast. Is there
Mm-hmm.
something you've done to adjust your interview process or your selection process that you feel has really helped shape getting the right people at Raven?
Well, I think that, well, one, setting my expectations towards we're here to win the war, not every single battle. And take your time because the time spent now is going to pay off in dividends on the backside of getting the right people on the team. So that's one for me. It's just to be patient. I like your. I think you said slow is fast.
Go slow to go fast. Yep.
Go slow to go fast. One that I have used a lot is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. But it's the same whether you're flying an airplane or doing anything else for that matter. Just do it once, do it right. Don't make a mistake and have to do it 3 times. So that's one, setting my own expectations that it's going to take a little time to do it the right way and to find the right people. And then through our experience being a young company, we've learned a lot on our hiring process and what's important in our industry. And it's unique with our industry. We send our people in our airplanes kind of out all over the country, and they go in small teams, and they're kind of alone and unafraid. They've been giving, it's decentralized control like you see in the Navy, where this is your mission, here's your assets, go do it, report back when complete. Not everybody is cut or is built the same way, and not everybody responds to that kind of a challenge. And so finding people that embrace that challenge is key.
Now you're obviously leading the company now, but your whole background is aviation. Are you getting any more stick time yourself, or are you having to watch everyone else have a lot of fun in the process?
No, I'm not happy with that. No, I'm not happy with just watching. I get a question on. I do fly still. I don't fly enough, but it's kind of been in fits and starts for me. I think it's really important to fly. I mean, for my own personal, mental well-being, it's great to be in the air. At the same time, from a leadership perspective, I believe in leading from the front. It's also just good to be involved in all things we do, from HR to flight operations. It's important to be at least aware of all of it and involved in all of it at different levels. So as of today, I'm not happy with my rate of flying. I was at our operating location San Antonio yesterday, and I had to watch the planes taxi out, and I would have much rather been in the plane. But everybody has things to work on, and that's in my short-term goals is to increase my flying rates here pretty soon.
I think my microphone might have just gone out, so if you can't hear me, let me know. But I'm curious, as a follow-up question to that, you had an opportunity to fly at F-18, and I know your background, you wanted to always be in the Air Force. Things transpired differently when you were younger that led you to the Navy. You got a little taste of it later in your career with the F-22. I imagine that at the air shows, there's maybe a little bit of a battle between who's got the best demo. As you look back at your time between the F-22 and the F-18, which aircraft was your favorite?
Well, that's a good question. There may be a battle going on with demonstrations, but I know who the winner is, but I'll keep that to myself. As we talk about setting egos aside and being humble. The important thing is, the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels have a great relationship. It's just like the Air Force and the Navy. I have a lot of friends in the Air Force, and having an opportunity, I've flown in the Air Force. at Nellis Air Force Base, two commanders in a row at the Thunderbirds I met through my time at the Air Force. So I flew with while I was in the Air Force. That was really special. And to have that kinship, both time in the Air Force together, then flying demonstrations together. And Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, some things are very different. A lot of things are the same, though. And to be able to share, especially with a flight leader, where you're kind of alone on an island at sometimes, and to be able to sit down with the squadron commander of the Thunderbirds and share stories over a beer about his challenges and mine, that is a very special moment to have. And so I actually forgot the question with respect to who does the best demo. Airplanes. So Raptors, F-18s, F-16s.
What's more about your favorite? Your personal favorite.
I guess it depends on the day. My first love was the F-18, and I love that airplane. I could jump in it right now and be comfortable in it. Flying the plane I fly with Raven, if it's been a little bit of time since I've been in the Hawk, I will revert to Hornet. Hornet maybe not necessarily procedures, but things, the way the Hornet operates, the methodology. I'll kind of, my brain wants to go back to that. So that's my first love. That said, I've had a lot of other relationships as far as airplanes go. Got to fly the F-16 a little bit at Fallon. That was great. My dad retired from the Air Force flying the same F-16, a Block 15. So that was really special to get to fly that plane. And then flying the F-22 when I was applying to the Air Force and the Navy, that was really on my short list of, if I could go fly an F-22 in the Air Force, I'd do it right now. And someday, I actually applied to the Navy as a backup to the Air Force, to the Navy. Or excuse me, I applied to the Air Force, and then the Navy was a backup in case I didn't get it. And then I was fortunate enough to actually get both. I had the opportunity to pick one, and that was a really tough time because I actually felt more grief than happiness because I knew I had to give one up. But I'm dodging the question on favorite airplane, but I would have to say F-18. But okay. There's a tie for second with about three others.
A little equal opportunist. You'll if one's available, you're going to get up in the air, and it sounds like.
Yeah, my wife accused me of being a little too diplomatic at times, but I do love them all.
I can't even imagine what it must feel like to fly in one of those. I don't know if you know or not, but we're currently pursuing our private pilot's license, and I'm thinking about these DA-40s that we're flying and how it feels for me when I'm like, oh, full throttle? Okay, here we go. And I mean, totally different experience for you with the jets and the fighters that you've been flying. That's pretty incredible.
It's all relative, that's for sure.
Well, so as you think about, Raven, would you say there are any types of misconceptions or, around adversary air training or private, defense contractors that you wish people maybe understood better?
Well, this is a conversation I had recently, and I think that we're contractors, and I know what it's like when you're in the military to see contractors and think, oh, slimy contractor, or just trying to make a buck. And there's some truth to that at times. I understand that. I just, not because it hurts my feelings or like you need to involve us, but I want everyone to know, if I could tell everyone right now, is that we really want to help. And yeah, I want to put my airplanes on contract and earn some money for our company so we keep all these people at work and continue to do that mission. But we want to help. We want to do, give us, we want to be at the table. We would, if you want us at the table, we want to be there, and we aren't going to be there just to wear the Raven hat. We're there to make the mission better. And we're also there with our friends in the other companies. And I do say friends, and because I know that a rising tide does lift all boats. And if ATAC is winning, if Draken is winning, we're winning. And so sometimes it just makes sense for one of them to win a contract over us. I understand that. Maybe it'll hurt a little bit, but once you get through that competitive side of it, we're all on the same page. These are all friends from our time in the military. So although we do compete for contracts, and you should, to make sure you're getting the right aircraft and the right team on the contract, we're all here for the same mission. And it's a pretty unified group, I think, when you look at the adversary air, contract air services community.
So within your space and the adversary air, the training that you guys are doing for the warfighters of the future, something I always think about is the risk around the work that you do. How would you say you instill sort of this culture of safety or risk management, maybe is a good way to describe it, with your team, but also the individuals that you're training?
Well, I heard a quote a few years ago that I hold on to, and it's kind of tied around safety, that a tactically sound plan is inherently safe, but a safe plan is not necessarily tactically sound. And so I think that's important. Safety and operations aren't separate. It's not like you build a mission and then, all right, let's put safety on top of it and go be safe. That's just built into everything you do. When I talked about hiring the right people, that they need a lot of strategic vision at times, or at least tactical vision at times, we also are hiring the people that know when to say stop. Like, this is not right now. We need to slow down. We need to disappoint the customer on the second go today and not go flying. That can be tough to do, especially that's an added component when you're talking about a customer and profit and making sure that we keep the doors open and the lights on. But when you build that trust with your customer and your end user, and they understand why you're doing what you're doing, then you have cash in the bank to say, you know what, we need to take a knee today. And it's extremely important that our leadership teams, both pilots, maintenance, everybody knows that that's not just asked of you, it's expected of you. If you see something, say something. Because at the end of the day, it's just, that one mission isn't important enough to skin a knee or run a plane off a runway or hurt somebody. Everybody understands that big picture. And you're going to probably take some heat because, you know what, I made a mistake and the jet's not ready for this, that, or the other. Okay, let's learn from that and get better next time. Good call, stopping work, not doing the mission, and then let's just learn from it and get better. And that's all you can ask. And so in my position, as much as I want to win and get the mission done and go, it's important that the leaders underreact, stay calm, approach things objectively, know that you've given the right guidance, the right guardrails, let them go do the mission, and I think that continues to weave into everything we do.
We're pushing up on time. I know you're super busy. Do you have time for one more question?
Love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
So for service members that are considering a transition into civilian leadership or even entrepreneurship, what advice would you give those service members?
Do it. Try it out. Do it. Do hard things. Go. If you're a lifelong learner, financial statements to me looked a little daunting. I'm an engineer through my education, and then I'm a fighter pilot. So didn't spend a lot of time in the P&L and in the balance sheet and the cash flow statement. But accounting's mostly addition and subtraction with a little maybe multiplication and division at times when it gets really challenging. So just do it. Really that's it. Go do hard things and give it a try. Don't sell yourself short. And you're also not military doesn't mean you're the end all be all either. You've learned a lot in the military. If I'm talking to one person, you learned a lot and your experiences are phenomenal. Let's move to the next challenging thing. use those lessons. Don't rest on those laurels. You definitely can't, no matter what you do. If you want to grow and do something different, you can't phone it in. You got to go back to school, in so many words. But
I love that.
Definitely do it. You have the opportunity, do it.
So this has been a super powerful conversation. I really appreciate you setting aside some time today. If people want to follow you or Raven, where would they follow you?
Yeah, ravenaero.com. Just remember it's RAVN, so no E in Raven. Ravenaero.com. That's where we are. There's a lot of links to LinkedIn pages and things like that. So check us out there, and doing a lot of fun work.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We, again, appreciate your time, and look forward. We're going to check out those books that you recommended, and reach out to one of your old commanders to see if they'd like to join us as well.
That's great. I'll make sure I tell him that he's going to get a call.
Thank you.
Thanks again,
Appreciate
Eric.
you.
You bet. Take care.